Jesus said you cannot serve two masters. You'll love one and hate the other. See, when you pledge in a fraternity or a sorority, you are pledging to a God. Yes, you are pledging to a God. You are giving your allegiance to a God. And God says, I will have no other gods before me. So automatically, you are placing yourself in hostility with God. And so many of these black preachers are members of fraternities. A lot of them are members of fraternities. And it's interesting that the ones that are members of fraternities are the main ones that keep pushing this black liberation theology stuff. They are the main ones that continue to push this stuff, continue to preach that black people are victims, continue to preach this other gospel, continue to pervert the true gospel of Jesus Christ, and continue to mislead and misinform and misdirect so many Christians that go to your church. And I wonder why. Is it because you can't preach the real gospel of Jesus Christ because your allegiance is not to him? Is that it? Is it because you have to preach this other gospel to confuse people because that is your God? I'm just throwing a question out there because you cannot serve two gods. You cannot serve two masters. So let's take a look at some of these black liberation theology preachers and fraternities they are a part of. Let's start with the beginning. James Cone. And for those of you who don't know who James Cone is the founder of Black Liberation Theology. He's the one that took that Marxist thought and placed it into the quote-unquote black church. He's the one that brought that in. He's the one. This is one that a lot of the Black Liberation Theology preachers follow. So this man, you hear about what he did during the Civil Rights Movement. If you look at him at the bottom, you'll see that he was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. He was an A Phi A. That's James Cone, the father of Black Liberation Theology. Now let's go further. Let's look at Freddy Haynes. This man has made a living over the past decades preaching this Black Liberation Theology stuff. You just heard what he said after the election.
Because you feel like the psalmist is talking to us today. I'll read it now to you in the Freddie Haynes translation. God is sure enough good, especially to those who are trying to do the right thing. But as for me, I almost lost my mind and my steps nearly went astray, for I became envious of those who are arrogant and pompous. I saw the prosperity of Donald Trump. He has an easy time until he dies. His body is well fed with McDonald's and he's not in trouble like others. He's not afflicted like most people. Therefore, pride is his necklace. He's the proudest, pompous person you've ever seen. He uses language of violence against his enemies. His eyes bulge out from laziness. The imaginations of his heart just runs wild. He mocks people, makes fun of people, calls people out of their names and speaks maliciously. He's downright arrogant and is always threatening people with oppression. He sets his mouth against heaven in the name of putting together a Bible that has his name on it and the Constitution of the United States that he has broken and violated. His tongue comes across the earth. Therefore, the people turn to him, and in his cult following, they follow him. The wicked say, God doesn't really know about this. Does the Most High know everything? Look at them, the wicked. They are always at ease. They increase their wealth. He uses the White House in order to increase his wealth in all of his buildings.
Yeah, this man, Freddy Haynes. They got him listed as a prophetic pastor, passionate leader, social activist, eloquent orator, and educator, engaged in the preaching the gospel. He's not engaged in preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. He's engaged in preaching the social gospel, which is not a gospel at all, and fighting against racial injustice. Now, if you scroll on down here, while a student at Bishop College, he also became a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Incorporated. Interesting. He's also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. You're starting to see the trend. You see the trend of these people so preoccupied with social justice, so preoccupied with using black liberation theology instead of using the gospel to change people's circumstances. Because the gospel is more powerful than some Marxist theology or Marxist thought. The gospel has the power to transform people's lives. But when you pervert the gospel with this black liberation theology stuff, it does not transform people's lives. It keeps people in bondage. As a matter of fact, it confines people to a certain mindset. It confines people to a certain limitation. And that's intentional because these people are utilizing that black liberation theology to push the oppressor dynamic to keep people listening to them in bondage, because the more the people are in bondage, the more it furthers their case that America is systemically racist. Don't you see the trend? Don't you see what they do? They have to have people struggling in order to justify their ideology. So you got Freddie Haynes, who's a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. You heard what Jamal Bryant said last week after the election, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, I rise tonight because a lot of people sold their self-worth in this election cycle. 18 million people didn't vote at all. Did y'all hear what I just said? 18 million people did not vote at all. After it is that they called up Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. The lead demographic that went to go vote for Trump yesterday was the Latino Hispanic community. Y'all ain't saying nothing to me. White women yielded decisions about their bodies to white men who have never had a law legislating about their body functions. Some black men couldn't hurdle their own misogyny and went to the polls and voted for somebody who was a racist, somebody who is a convicted felon for their own personal tax breaks. Y'all ain't saying nothing, but the most consistent voter on yesterday was black women. Because black women made up in their mind, I would rather starve to death than let some white racist misogynist get back into the White House and do it over a qualified black sister. Y'all ain't saying nothing. But I'm glad to see some black women in the building who had made up in their mind, before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. The rest of y'all ain't got to say nothing. But if there's some super bad sisters who are in this room who are committed to making a better future for your children than what you had for yourself, will the sisters make some noise right there? I'd rather starve to death. I don't care who got elected yesterday. He shall reign forevermore. Come on, I can't hear nobody. They got control over the Senate. They got control over the House. They got control over the Supreme Court. But they ain't got control over heaven. If you open up your mouth, angels are on the way. I need you to bless him like something in heaven is about to be loose.
So Jamal Harrison Bryant. Oh, he is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. He's a noop. Ka Psi. That is interesting. It was one of those things when I was in college. I had friends of mine that were members of Kappa Alpha Psi, and they would invite me to their meetings, to their smokers as they called them. But it was something on the inside of me that said, nah, that's not a place where I needed to be. I tried to go. A number of times I tried to go. I got to the door and I left because the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit on the inside of me said that's not a place for a Christian, a Bible-believing Christ follower to be. And so that's why I didn't pledge in college. I had opportunities to, but I didn't pledge in college. Number one, because the Spirit of God, the witness on the inside of me. And number two, I couldn't do those things that they had those people pledge and do. I'm just being real. I cannot do those things. I cannot give somebody the ability to do those things to me. Rudolph McKissick. This is what he posted on his Instagram. You remember him, right? The one that says this?
Because if y'all want to go to the Bible and claim that a person doesn't support the Bible, he's an adulterer. That's in the Bible. He's a bigot. That's in the Bible. He's a liar. That's in the Bible. And y'all don't support our children when they get out the womb. So don't go to the Bible to try to tell me why I ought not support somebody, because your candidate breaks sins every day. And secondly, the United States ain't a church, it's a country. This ain't about discipleship, it's about citizenship. Now in here, that might be a different story, but in the country, every citizen gets rights. That's just my little take, because I'm so sick of folk on social media. How in the world you supporting when I can't support anybody who kills babies? Oh, I almost said bad word. You supporting a candidate and a party that kills our children, that wants to do away with health care, that wants to do away with mothers having the money they need for daycare so they could go back to work. You want to do away with all of that? Please hold your righteous indignation and your one-trick pony for somebody who don't know the Bible, because that ain't a dialogue y'all want to. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry.
That's Rudolph McKissick. He's an Omega. He's a Q-dog. Don't you start to see the trend now of these black liberation theology preachers who have more of allegiance to their Greek fraternity than the Bible? How they're more influenced by their Greek fraternity than the Word of God? Because if you are influenced by the Word of God, you will not endorse a candidate or platform that is against God. You will not endorse a candidate or platform that is anti-God. You will not endorse a candidate or platform that stands for the reduction of black people. Just being real. You will not stand for a platform or a candidate that wants to mutilate children, that wants to bring drag queens to read to children in school. You wouldn't push this on a culture. But if you are not in allegiance to the God of the Bible, but you're in allegiance to a Marxist thought, oppressor dynamic, those things don't matter to you, because racism, the God of blackness, ultimately reigns supreme in your mind and in your heart. R.A. Vernon. And just to be fully transparent, Dr. Martin Luther King was also a member of the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. So you see this trend of all of these black preachers who have their allegiance to these Greek fraternities. Is that influencing them more than the Word of God? I would tend to say yes, because when you become a member of those fraternities, you pledge your allegiance to that fraternity, which in turn you're pledging your allegiance to the God of that fraternity. And so your allegiance is not to the God of the Bible, not to Christ. Your primary allegiance is to that God. And so therefore that influences what you say. That's why you can't talk about sin. That's why there's certain topics you don't talk about, because you don't have the conviction of the Word of God to preach on those things, because your mind is being driven by your membership in that Greek fraternity more than the Word of God. That's why they can condone and endorse all kinds of stuff. And that's the issue with the black community. See how I talk about that triumvirate? And at the top, I talk about the black pastors and the black Greek organizations. They work hand in hand. They are together. And you know who influences those black fraternities and sororities? The LGBTQ, like Pastor Williams said.
The church is losing or has lost the culture. We don't have any influence anymore. And now the last thing we've had, the church is slowly creeping into LGBTQ. Because more of your black preachers, this is what I was talking about the other week that people didn't hear, many of your black preachers, in order to stay loyal to black are having to connect with civil rights organizations that's pushing the LGBTQ agenda. So now they bowing to black, and now they bowing to LGBTQ. Because LGBTQ has taken over many of your civil rights organizations, including, no, I ain't gonna say that. But they've gone in, they've contributed money, and now with that money, that civil rights organization has to bow and accept LGBTQ, and guess what? That influences other black people. And that's why many of our people are going contrary to God's will and way, because they are following race and color and not God. And so when I come up here and preach on this, I sound crazy to everybody because I want to be obedient to my God.
So do you see that? Do you see how these black preachers have been compromised by their membership in these Greek fraternities? And so therefore, they can't preach the unadulterated word of God. They can't preach the whole counsel of God because of their allegiance to their Greek God. And therefore, all that does is make the people that go to their churches victims. Well, we're not victims. We are empowered for greatness.